On a July morning in 1976, a black aircraft screamed across the desert sky faster than any crewed jet ever had, and faster than any has since. 50 years later, that record still stands. Not because no one has tried to beat it, not because the technology to go faster does not exist. It stands because the machine that set it was never really matched, and the strangest part of the whole story is not the speed at all. It is what the plane was built from, and where that material secretly came from. This is the story of the fastest machine ever flown by human hands, and the secret hidden inside its own skin, built by people who believed it could be done. To understand why this aircraft needed to be so extreme, you have to remember the fear that hung over those years. Two great powers were locked in a silent contest, each desperate to see what the other was hiding, without starting a war to find out. An earlier spy plane had already been shot out of the sky, its pilot captured, the whole embarrassing failure broadcast to the world. The lesson was brutal and simple. If you wanted to fly over your rival's most guarded secrets and come home safely, you could not simply fly higher. You had to fly so fast that nothing on Earth could catch you. So a small, secretive team of engineers set out to build an aircraft that could outrun every missile and every interceptor that existed, or ever might exist. Their answer was almost absurd in its ambition. A plane that would cruise for hours at more than 3 times the speed of sound, so fast that the air itself became the enemy. At that speed, friction alone would heat the skin of the aircraft past 500 degrees, hot enough to soften ordinary aluminum like candle wax. There was only one metal light enough to fly and strong enough to survive that furnace, and it very nearly ended the entire program before it began. Now, before this story goes on, hold a question in your mind. When we praise an achievement like this one, whose ingenuity are we really admiring? The engineers who solved every technical impossibility in front of them? Or the quiet, secret machinery of an intelligence operation working behind the scenes, so far outside the spotlight that almost no one involved could ever take public credit? Hold that thought, because the reveal ahead will test where you land. The metal that could survive the heat was maddeningly difficult to work with. It reacted badly to ordinary tools, cracked without warning, and rejected batch after batch that failed to meet the impossible standard required. Engineers had to invent entirely new ways of shaping and joining it, essentially building a new branch of manufacturing from nothing. But there was a problem even more basic than how to shape the metal. There was simply not enough of it. The richest, purest deposits of this rare material on the entire planet sat inside the borders of the very rival power this aircraft was being built to spy on. Built by people who believed it could be done, and who then had to solve an impossible riddle just to get the raw material into their hands at all. Here is where the story turns into something almost too strange to believe. Rather than give up, the people running this secret program quietly built a maze of shell companies and third-party buyers stretching halfway around the world. Through those fake fronts, using invented cover stories, purchase orders were placed and quietly filled. The material flowed out of the rival nation, through neutral countries, and into the hands of the very program built to fly over that nation's skies. According to those closest to the operation, the sellers on the other end never suspected a thing. They believed they were simply supplying ordinary industrial buyers. They had, without knowing it, helped build the very aircraft that would later look down on their own territory from the edge of space. Earlier, I asked whose ingenuity we should really admire here. Sit with that now, because both halves of this story are equally true. This aircraft was an engineering miracle, full stop, the product of some of the sharpest minds of their generation. And it was also a masterpiece of secrecy, built in part from material acquired through a quiet deception that its own supplier never saw coming. Tell me which impresses you more, the metal or the misdirection, because most people, when they hear this story for the first time, cannot quite decide. Once built, the aircraft proved almost impossible to threaten. Over more than 3 decades of missions, thousands of missiles were fired in its direction over the years, and not one ever found its mark. It simply outran them, climbing and accelerating faster than anything sent to stop it. Not a single aircraft of this type was ever lost to an enemy. And then, on that July morning in 1976, flying a measured course, it delivered the record that no crewed jet engine has matched in the 50 years since. If you are still weighing engineering against secrecy, tell me where you finally landed, because the honest answer is that neither one alone explains what this machine became. What lingers about this story is bigger than any single flight. We tend to assume that records like this eventually fall, that someone, somewhere, is always working to go a little faster. And for most records, that is true. But sometimes an achievement is built from such a rare, difficult, and expensive convergence of secrecy, material, and sheer will that no one has found a reason compelling enough to chase it again. The record here has not survived because it cannot be beaten. It has survived because the world quietly decided it no longer needed to try. Newer aircraft can fly higher. Some, unmanned, can likely fly faster still, but none of them have carried a human being through the sky at this speed, in this way, and none have needed to. The knowledge of how they did it, the metal, the manufacturing, the audacity of the plan itself, all of it still exists. It simply sits there, unused, waiting for a reason that has not yet arrived. Perhaps that is the truest measure of a record like this one. Not that it stands because it is unbeatable, but that it stands because we have not yet needed to ask the question again. It was built by people who believed it could be done, and that's worth remembering. If this is the kind of story you want to keep discovering, the best thing you can do right now is hit subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because every single week we bring you one more incredible machine the history books left out, and you will not want to miss the next one.